picture. Y'all aware of what's happening on Thursday? What's happening? Y'all aware of this? Okay. Yeah, that test will cover fluids in the body and then all of this chapter that we've been doing. So if you're in your book, I have a book. The last part of chapter 2. So, a second, I'll tell you. Oh, she's got it. She's quicker than you. All right. So in the book, that picks up on page 48, and then it goes through the end of the chapter that we're currently on, which is chapter 3, right? So page 48 on in the book. Thank you. In the workbook, that means page 24 on, all the way through what we'll finish today. Fluids in the body, pressure, heart, you need to know all that business, the eye, the bladder, the lungs, how they operate, those various principles, the Poisson equation, how that works. And then in chapter 3, work and energy, sort of these basic principles we've been talking about, the work energy theorem, that if I do work on an object, I change its energy, the conservation of energy, that total amount of energy remains the same. Power, this idea of energy per time. You need to know your temperature scales, what they're based on, what we use them for. The methods of heat flow, conduction, convection, radiation, examples of each, work done by the body, and then metabolism, body temperature, and thermal conductivity of the body. Okay? Metabolism, we'll finish that up today. We'll finish this chapter. We might even, in fact, go on to the next chapter on sound, speech, and hearing, but that will not be on the test. All right? Y'all excited? Exam number 2. Read through your chapter. Look at the old test if you just want to practice. Though I typically write new questions, but they're similar, so they test similar things. And look through your notes, read the chapter. All right? Take flashcards if you do that. I'm a big flashcard kind of person. All right, let's see. Last time we had started on metabolism. I want to finish this up. We had talked about the basal metabolic rate. The basal metabolic rate is just sort of the amount of energy that you need to live, heart to pump, to breathe, brain to function, all that energy. It turns out that that's most of the energy that your body uses every day. But then we also talk about the total metabolic rate, which includes all the energy that you use. So the total metabolic rate is the total energy to run your body. Oops. Shoot. And that includes any activity or exercise or whatever that you engage in. So walking around, talking to people, anything that, if you're not just laying in bed resting all day, it would include all of that. So your BMR, that's your basal metabolic rate. Remember, that's just sort of what you need to live. It may require about 1,600 calories per day. Remember, those are food calories, so they're actually kilocalories. But the TMR can be a bit more than this because you're including not just the BMR, but also all that extra activity, up to maybe 2,500 calories per day. You know, those are like guys on 2-a-days in football camp or whatever. Is it 2-a-days or 3-a-days? 2-a-days, right? Yeah, so our people in boot camp, that they'll need upwards of 2,500 calories per day. So on pretty rigorous activity. Notice, however, that the BMR is the bulk of your energy that's burned or your calories burned every day. So while exercise is great for your body, it does all sorts of good things for your body, to really manage your weight, You really have to focus on the consumption of calories. So to manage your weight, or to lose weight in particular, you have to cut your consumption of calories. And we'll see later in the chapter on electricity when we talk about calories, when we talk about the body scanner, which uses electricity, that when you exercise and when you build body mass, that you can actually affect your basal metabolic rate. In fact, I started lifting weights a couple of years ago. I don't know if any of y'all lift weights, but when I started lifting weights, I just got hot all the time. Like I went from being kind of cold natured to being hot natured all the time. It's like I lay in bed, my wife is over there with 4 blankets piled on top of her, and I just have burning up because I found that my basal metabolic rate actually increased as you build muscle mass. So you can affect your basal metabolic rate in the amount of calories that you burn every day, but largely it's sort of set by who you are, right? Who you're born as. So really the way to manage weight for your athletes or for just friends and family that you know is by the food that you eat, consumption of calories. All right, let's try these two little clickers, and then we'll listen to a little podcast that I like. BMR is an abbreviation for which of these? Doing the one on the left now. All right, I'm going to stop at 35. Looks like that's everybody. Okay, awesome. Basal metabolic rate. That's an easy one. We'll do this next one too, and then I'll give you a joke. What is the food unit of energy? Is it the watt, the C, capital C calorie, joule, or this lowercase c calorie? Or those are different. All right, we'll stop at 30. Just guess if you're not sure. Awesome. Okay, very good. B is the right answer. I don't have a joke for you, but I sort of have a story from when I was in college. You want to hear the story? It's short. I used to wait tables at a restaurant in Mississippi. You know from Mississippi? I'm sorry. But anyway, I used to wait tables at this little restaurant. It's kind of like Flanagan's here in town. It's called Harvey's. And I started tending bar. And one night I was at the bar, and this guy walks in, and he had jumper cables like around his neck. And he was sort of, I think he was sort of, and he sort of stumbles into the bar, and I looked at him. I said, "Hey, bud, you can come in, but don't try to start anything." That was partially true. I really did work at Harvey's, but that last part, I just made that up. Okay, let's listen to a little podcast. This is from the Nutrition Diva. Y'all ever listen to the Nutrition Diva? You gotta get it. It's really cool. It's a cool podcast. Let's see, it's related to, or it's part of the how to do it. No, it's not how to do everything. In a second, I'll tell you. Well, she'll announce it. But anyway, all right. But especially as you guys go into the various athletic trainers and the like, many of you, athletes, their diet is very important and it really impacts their performance. So, learn as much as you can about dietetics and how foods affect people's performance. All right. So let's look at heat and body temperature. Homeostasis. I think this was actually on the quiz. Am I right? If I recall correctly. Homeostasis. Homeostasis is the fact that the body's temperature is very regular. We're not like alligators who are cold-blooded and their temperature is dependent upon their environment. Instead, as warm-blooded creatures, our body maintains its own body temperature to a very specific temperature. The core temperature only changes slightly with exercise or with illness. Now, the temperature of your extremities can change, your fingers, your nose, and they are actually quite a bit different from your core temperature, but your core temperature remains basically the same. So the outer portions of the body can vary a lot. Sources of heat are the metabolic processes in the major organs. So, you know, these organs do work and they produce a lot of heat. Your liver, your heart, your brain, and your skeletal muscles. That's a brain. Your skeletal muscles. When we talked about those different kinds of muscles in a previous chapter, the skeletal muscles like your biceps, your triceps, your deltoids, that kind of business. Heat is lost through the skin by conduction, by convection, and by radiation. So you can probably imagine each of those and how they affect your loss of heat. So, you know, since I started lifting weights, I really like to walk around barefooted because I lose a lot of heat through my feet, and it just cools me down. And you can lose. I'm sorry if that grosses you out, but I'd really like to go barefooted here. Is that allowed? I'm not sure it's allowed. We should all be barefooted, right? Uh, what's that? Anyway, convection, if a fan, right, will blow fluids over your body and allow you to cool, and then radiation. As bodies of warmth, about 100 degrees, we emit infrared radiation. We'll talk about infrared radiation and what it is in a later chapter on light. But you all, you're sitting there and you're just emitting glowing in the infrared, kind of like that movie Predator. You ever seen that movie Predator? Yeah, with what was it, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think. Yeah. So the predator guy could see the infrared signature of all the bodies, and we'll see that a little bit later. So this is including evaporation, which, as we talked about previously, that evaporation where you're losing that latent heat of evaporation or of vaporization, that takes a lot of energy away from your body. So heat loss of the body. Conduction also occurs. Organs are at a higher temperature than the skin. Let me draw a person over here. He has a claw on his left hand. But you get the idea. So here, our heart, for example, is a much higher temperature than the outside of our body. And so we get the conduction of heat that will go outwards to the skin. So we get conduction within our body as the hotter parts of our body transfer heat energy by conduction to the outer parts of our body. Also convection, cool air comes into contact with warm skin. All right, so if we have a fan blowing on to us, that cools us obviously, and then radiation, warm objects emit infrared radiation. I have a video here I want to show you, though I'll actually have an infrared camera that I'll bring later in the semester when we talk about that. Let's see. I think it's on YouTube. Let me pull it up here. Give me just a second. But for that, I just wanted you to recognize that one, bodies that are warm, they emit infrared radiation. And then two, I don't know if you noticed, but their bodies were all different colors. So the really dark colors were cold, and then the bright red were warmer. So you do have a big variation in your body for temperature on your external appendages. All right. Okay, and then of course evaporation is we have this through sweating. Which of these, evaporation is really what form of heat transfer? Think about this for a moment. What evaporation, what type of heat transfer is it really? Is it conduction? Is it convection? Or is it radiation? It is one of those three, but which is it? We sort of list it as a fourth category because it plays such a big part in the body, but it really does fall into one of these three categories. About what is required for evaporation? Conduction, convection, or radiation? Okay, you are sort of split out. Ask your neighbor what they put. And we're sort of equally split between those three answers. See what they think. Now remember, conduction requires contact. Convection means like a fluid flow, that you have to have a fluid flowing around you. And then radiation includes, electromagnetic radiation, light, like infrared. So which of those is required for sweating to occur? Conduction, convection, or radiation? All right, many of you are putting B. And while B does speed up evaporation, like when you have a fan blowing on you, it speeds up the evaporation. That's not really necessary. You don't have to have wind blowing on you for sweating to be effective. So rethink that. I'll tell you that it's not B, it's either A or C. B does help with sweating, but it does help sweating to cool your body because it hastens the evaporation process. But you don't have to have a moving fluid in order for evaporation to occur, or in order for this cooling method to be effective. All right? Oh, for goodness sake. You're like halfway. Okay, I'm gonna stop. We'll stop at 2:05, okay? All right. Yeah, A is right. It requires contact, right? You have a little drop of sweat on your body, and if it doesn't touch your body, then it's not going to draw the energy away from your body. Remember, this, in the process of evaporation, this thing goes from being a solid to being a vapor, and it pulls away a lot of energy away from, or excuse me, from a liquid to a vapor. And it pulls away all that energy from the latent heat of vaporization from your body. But if the two are not in contact, then that can never occur. Uh, as I said, convection helps to hasten that process because it just speeds up the evaporation, but it's really the contact that's required between the fluid on your body, sweat, and uh, and your body itself that cause that heat transfer. All right, let's see. So sort of the typical amounts of heat loss that we have for these in, let's see, where am I? Conduction and convection make up about 20%. Radiation makes up about 50%. So you lose a lot of heat to radiation. That's why if you've ever been to like a sporting event, like a race or a marathon, and you have people at the end that are really cold, what do they do to them? What do they put around them? Right now? Those little, like, they look like aluminum foil. Those little shiny blankets. They're really tiny little thin things, right? But what that does is that helps to reflect the radiation back into your body. So it impedes the loss of radiation because you lose so much heat to your to radiation. I think they call those things space blankets. I've heard them called that before. They probably have a more technical term. You guys know what they're called? No, but you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. All right. So an evaporation or sweating is about 30% of our heat loss. And typically, the body produces about 100 watts of heat. Remember, a watt is 1 joule per second. We use that to describe our electrical devices, and we'll see that later in a later chapter. But like, for example, these light bulbs in here, they're pretty efficient. They're only about 8 or 10 watts. But you guys put out about 100 watts of power. That means 100 joules per second your body is putting out. And much of that escapes, about 50 of it escapes by radiation. It can be affected by a number of things. The nutrition diva, she talked about this a little bit, I think, although she was talking about, you know, calorie consumption, but those are sort of related. You can take cool or hot showers. Oh, I think I only have 3 things. I don't know how I got 6 bullets here. So especially if you've been out, you know, exercising, you can come in and take a cool shower, and that'll help to cool your body off a lot. Drinking cold or hot liquids. Right, so which is why Southerners get the uh, the image, the Southern image is that you're sitting around on your porch drinking what? Iced tea, sweet tea. Where I'm from, y'all drink sweet tea or it's sweet? You gotta drink sweet tea. Um, so because when you drink that cold liquid, it goes into your core and it really does impact your overall body temperature. It can cool you a lot. Or you know, if you live up north, you drink hot tea or whatever. Um, and then insulating the body. You know, we put on more or less clothes. We just have those 3. But you can probably think of other examples. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I do have some others. Forced convection. You can have forced convection. That's really just the fancy way of say, I'm going to go sit in front of a fan, right? So if somebody says they're hot, you can get one of those little paper fans like ladies used to use at church, right, to fan themselves. And you say, here, try a little forced convection. That'll help for you. Um, evaporation or sweating. We've already talked about. Or, you know, you can buy one of those little misters like they have at the Audubon Zoo. You walk through the mister and it provides a little extra sweat on your body to allow you to cool off. Those are very effective. And then radiation, both your body radiating outward and then also, you know, like energy from the sun. That our bodies can become heated because of radiation from the sun, infrared radiation from the sun. All right. So how does the body regulate its temperature? What was this called? This quality of the body that says that it regulates its temperature. Do you remember the word that we used to describe that? Homeostasis, right? That the body keeps a very regular temperature that's different from a lot of other creatures. And it's a neurological thing, so the brain can increase or decrease the amount of heat that's generated. It has these heat receptors all throughout the body that says, okay, the body is hot or the body is cold. And then it sends that information to the brain. And then the brain can do several things in order to maintain that temperature to prevent heat loss. One of them is blood vessels in the skin contract. These are, of course, involuntary, most of these. Blood vessels in the skin contract. Right, they get smaller, so you get less blood flow to the skin, and that means that nice warm blood you're keeping deeper down within your core. So that means that you have less heat loss, because the blood vessels that are close to the skin, they get smaller, there's less blood that flows to them, and so you get less heat loss. Um, Less blood to the skin, less heat loss. Shivering. This is just a physical activity. It's involuntary again, of course, but it produces heat. And then also your brain can release chemicals to increase your metabolic rate. This is going to be your basal metabolic rate, right? Just that how much energy is required to live. And this produces heat. The nutrition diva, she talked about that, how your BMR can be changed by a variety of things. Very tiny amount, but you know, if you change your environment, if you're in a very cold environment, then your body has to use more energy to stay warm, and so you use more energy for that. It produces heat in your body. Plus, there are a number of voluntary actions. All right, you put on a jacket, you wrap yourself in a blanket, you sit next to a heater, stuff like that. But these are three involuntary things that your body does. Those are to conserve heat. There are also some ways to cool down. Your blood vessels will not contract, but they dilate. All right, so that allows more blood flow to the skin, and then that releases heat energy to the environment. And the second thing is through sweating. Again, involuntary things, but there are voluntary things that you can do. Take off clothes, or you cool yourself with a cool drink, or sit in front of fans, various things that we've talked about. There are two conditions, hyperthermia and hypothermia. Hyperthermia is the temperature is too high, the temperature of your body. You've gone out of that homeostasis and your body temperature is a little bit too high. This can result from a fever. Which helps to produce white blood cells. You know, to fight infection. My son, man, when he gets sick, unlike my wife or my daughter, when he gets sick, he'll spike a fever and then he'll be done with it. So the fevers can be very useful in helping us body to fight infection. In fact, I'm sort of the same way. Sometimes I'll get sick in the middle of the night and I even get a fever in the middle of the night. I'll feel fine going to bed and feel fine getting up, but I just in the middle of the night I've been sick and I just spiked a big fever and my body has been able to fight off that infection as well. My hypothermia is the body is too cold. Oh, so your body temperature can be too high too, not just from illness, but from overexertion or dehydration, and your body just isn't able to cool itself. So another way is, you know, exertion combined with high temperatures, combined with dehydration. I'm sure you guys study that, at least you athletic training majors especially, right? That you have to be really on the watch out for your athletes, that they are not exerting themselves too much and too high of a temperature when they're dehydrated. And then hypothermia is the temperature is too low. And that just occurs generally when the environment is too cold and you're not properly cared for. Let's see. Oh, let's do this, okay? Let's try this one. On the left, person sweats. They lose a tenth of a kilogram of water from their skin. That's 100 grams of water. How much heat is dissipated through this evaporation? If you remember, we had a couple of equations that we came up with. These are on your equation sheet, but we said that heat loss by change of state is equal to the mass times the latent heat. You can have the latent heat of vaporization, which is what's relevant here, or the latent heat of fusion. And then the other thing is that when I change temperature of a material, that the heat required to change that temperature is given by mc delta T. Remember we had that phase change diagram earlier? This is our energy required to change phase. This is our energy required for a particular phase, say a liquid, for example, to change temperature. This came up in calorimetry, both of these. Oh, I'm sorry. So do the one on the left right now. I don't like to give y'all too many math problems on the test, but you could see one like this. All right, we'll go about 8 more seconds. I'm going to stop at 110, just 5 seconds. Just guess if you're not sure. Okay, good. B is right. Here, there's lots of information given that you don't really need. All you really need to know is that the Q is equal to the mass of the liquid that you're losing, 0.1, times the latent heat of fusion. Latent heat of vaporization, which is this quantity. I give you also the latent heat of fusion, but remember that's the energy to go from a liquid to a solid. I always like to think of fusing together to make things more solid, so that's the latent heat of fusion. You don't need the specific heat either. And so this is 0.1 kilograms times the latent heat of vaporization, which is 500 kilocalories per kilogram. Or I could also just write that as capital C calories. A tenth of 500 is 50. So you could see a calculation problem like that, but still no calculators. I feel like y'all can do this sort of math just fine, right? Y'all good on this? All right. Let's do the one on the right. How much energy is required to raise the temperature 2 kilograms of water from 37 to 42? All right, let's stop at 125. 125. Just guess if you're not sure. Just a few more seconds. Okay, let's see here. So my Q, that's what I'm looking for, is this mc delta T. I have 2 kilograms. That's my mass. My specific heat, that's C right here. The specific heat is 1 kilocalorie per kilogram degree Celsius. We use water for a lot of our standards, or we have used it, and that's why uh, it has a specific heat equal to 1. It's not because water is special necessarily, but we've defined the calorie based on water. If you remember, it's actually 1 calorie is the energy required to raise 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. So that's why it has that specific heat. And then our delta T, that's probably what got hung up for some of you. I'm going from 37 to 42. So my delta T is 42 minus 37, and that's equal to 5 degrees Celsius. 5 times 1 times 2 is equal to 10. So A is the right answer. You know, this class isn't really, there's no math prerequisite, and I don't like to do a whole lot of math, but it is important for you guys to be able to look at values like this and be able to assimilate them and think about them and what they mean. So you will have a couple of questions on the test like this. It's important, even as you go into athletic training. I know that you won't be doing a whole lot of calculations, but in the medical field, sometimes you just got to do stuff like that. And all right, so be prepared for those sorts of questions on the test coming up Thursday. All right, one last section here. I think this is the last section. Yeah. So specific heat and thermal conductivity of the body. So consider a feverish feverish person with 104-degree fever. You put them in a tub of water to cool. How much energy must leave to have them cool properly? So if I have this person at 104 degrees Fahrenheit, how much energy do I have to take away from them for their body to decrease in temperature down to 98 degrees Celsius? And so I start with my calorimetry equation. Q is equal to mc delta T. Um, the mass of our person, you know, typical mass of a person is 70 kilograms. The specific heat of a person is not that much less than water because we're made up of a lot of water. It actually has that your specific heat is about 0.84. That's 0.84 kilocalories per kilogram degree Celsius. So just a little bit less than water. And then our change in temperature, well, 104 degrees fever, that's equal to about 40 degrees Celsius. I'm not going to have you do conversions. If I gave you a problem like this, I'd give it to you in Celsius. But 104 degrees is about 40 degrees Celsius. And we want to get this person's temperature down to what? 37. That is a temperature you need to know. Remember, you need to know those, I said room temperature and the body temperature. So 98 degrees Fahrenheit is about 37 degrees Celsius, and 70 degrees Fahrenheit is about what? 20 degrees Celsius. And of course, you need to know the freezing and boiling points of water. Those are 0 and 100. So our delta T is going to be 40. That's our minus 37. The difference in those two temperatures. Uh, Actually, that's not exactly right, but it's not terribly important. But just to be correct, I'm going to write it as 37. You don't need to do this if this bothers you. I'm going to do 37 minus 40 because I'm actually losing energy. That's going to give me a negative value over here, which means that I'm losing energy. So I'll carry on. But if you want to do 40 minus 37, that's fine. And then that value is equal to 176 kilocalories. All right. Q is equal to negative 176 kilocalories. That's how much energy you have to leave your body in order to cool down to 98 degrees Celsius. That assumes that your body sort of stops producing energy, which of course it doesn't. But, all right. So you'll see some calorimetry stuff. What is this process? Remember we had our three processes of heat transfer. What do we have? We had conduction, convection, and radiation. What is this if you put a feverish person into a tub of icy water or just cool water? What is that? That's conduction, right? Because it has contact between your body and the water. So that's conduction. And so as the last part of this chapter, if you recall, we had this rate of conduction that we saw, the thermal conductivity or the thermal conduction of the body. Um, I'm just going to give you a few values. Probably not going to see this kind of calculation. We'll probably just see calorimetry type stuff. But the thermal conductivity, remember that's what this K is. You do need to know that and how it affects the rate of thermal transfer. For the conductivity, we talked about different materials have different conductivity. So like wood, for example, has a much lower rate of thermal conductivity than metal. And that's why you can poke around in a fire with a wood stick, but not with a metal rod, because the metal rod will transfer heat up to your hand. So the thermal conductivity of the body is about zero point 0.2. I'm not going to give the units on that. The average, this is the area. Average area of a human body is about 1.8 square meters. So you figure you got a square meter on the front and a square meter on the back. So you're about 2 square meters. And this conduction occurs through the core. So if I think about my person, the conduction, this is a person wearing a Snuggie, one of those little suits. So my conduction, my heat is radiating outward. And if I think about my core is here, then I'm going really through just this little piece of skin. So I'm sort of going through the outer layer of the skin. So this distance D is going to be just the thickness of the skin, which isn't that much. It's just a few centimeters. What do I have here? About 1 centimeter of skin. So we'll just say that's about 1 centimeter. And our change in temperature is about, 20 degrees Celsius. That is a warm person going into a cool bath. So somebody in a 20 degrees Celsius bath with a temperature, the body temperature of 40 degrees Celsius. All right, and then I can calculate what is my rate of energy transfer. And that works out to be, putting in all these values, works out to be about 720 watts. So if you put a person into a cool bath, they lose almost 1,000 watts. That's quite a bit, actually. About 1,000 joules or 720 joules per second to that bath. You lose a lot of energy when you go into cold water. All right. Um, Finally, energy imbalance. We sort of talked about this, but if you use more energy than you consume, then you have weight loss. And your athletes, they might want to lose weight or gain weight, depending if you're a football player or if you're a long distance runner. It could be different for different athletes. If you consume more than you, if you consume more energy as you eat more than you use, then you have weight gain. And any one of those scenarios might be a good thing for your athletes. But as you know, many factors can contribute. High carb diets can lead to weight gain. Y'all know more about this than I do. But high carb diets can lead to weight gain. The carbs are converted to fat. Genetic disposition. There's all sorts of things that go into this. But the the adage is still true that if you eat more than you consume, then that's weight gain. If you use more than you consume, that's weight loss. That's true for anybody, despite the various differences that you might have. Okay, and that's the end of that chapter. See, any questions about it or questions about what to expect for the exam? Then we're picking up with fluids in the body, and then we're going all the way through to the end of this chapter, and that'll be all that there'll be on this exam. Unlike the quizzes, which are kind of not that important because we take a lot of them and I drop your lowest ones, though they are important. Like if you do poorly on all of them, then that's bad because they count 2 exams in the end. But the exams, you just get one shot at them, so no pressure or anything. But the quizzes are there to prepare you and sort of help you. And I think that you're probably almost already there, but you probably want to look over some of this stuff in the next couple of days if you haven't been already. All right? Excited about your exam? Are you? I hate exams, don't y'all? I almost do. They just make me nervous. I get really nervous in the days leading up to them. Do y'all get nervous? No. Yes? No? I get nervous. So get lots of sleep the next couple of days, get some rest, exercise, do all the stuff that you need to do to be healthy, but also spend time studying. I know you have other classes and stuff, but spend time preparing because the more you see the material, the better you'll do. The more you practice, the better you'll do. All right, let's move on to the next chapter. We made it through work and energy. That's probably the most boring chapter until we get to nuclear processes. I mean, you're probably saying, gosh, they're all boring, right? No, they're not all boring. They're exciting because we're talking about the human body and the physics of the human body. But the next chapter, all right, we're going to look at sound, the properties of sound, the properties of waves. There's a lot of cool things going on with waves. And then we'll look at the ear, which is a remarkable instrument in the body that can detect all sorts of different things. And just the way that it works, I think, is really cool. So, um, you probably studied waves a little bit in high school in physical science or physics if you took it. There are many examples of waves, right? We have waves in water. That's an example of a mechanical wave. So you have a physical thing that's moving up and down. But then we have other types of waves, like sound. Sound is a type of pressure wave where you have a medium that changes in pressure. So you have areas of high pressure and areas of low pressure. And if you've ever been to like a heavy metal concert, did y'all know that I used to play in a heavy metal band many, 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 many years ago? It's true. I play bass guitar. Did y'all know that? No? I guess we weren't that famous. We sort of disbanded. We were like 16, so sound, light is a type of wave, and we'll have a whole chapter on light. Light, whereas waves in water are mechanical waves, and we'll talk about this more later. Sound waves are pressure waves. They change pressure in the medium. Light is something we call an electromagnetic wave. So there's no medium required for light, but you have these variations in the electric and the magnetic fields as that wave travels through space. And we'll have a whole chapter, like I said, on that. We'll talk about the eye. I can't decide if the ear or the eye is my favorite organ. Do y'all have a favorite organ? The ear or the eye? The ear? Maybe the eye. Do you know the eye can detect like two photons? If we were in this room and it was completely light tight, and somebody put in two photons, your eye could detect that. Your eye could say, "Oh, there's light in this room." There's two photons. And we already have it. We have a couple of instruments that can do that. But those instruments, if you take them outside on a sunny day, they're fried right away. So the eye is pretty remarkable. Let's see, light. There are some other mechanical waves. So they're like sort of the waves in the water. Slinky. We'll show you in just a second. Or a rope. Like where you make a rope go like this. You ever do this? You ever do that thing with the big ropes where you, you know what I'm talking about? Use the big ropes as an exercise. So those are waves. Waves are periodic. They repeat. That's what that means. That a periodic something is something that repeats every period. They are called periodic waves. In a standing wave, the wave travels back and forth through the medium. And it repeats so that it looks like the wave is not moving. So if you've ever done this exercise, it doesn't work very well with these ropes, but if you've done where you take a rope and you tie it off to a bar, and then you have a person over here, and they do the rope up and down. You know what I'm talking about, right? Use those big ropes like that. You'll get a wave that appears that it's just staying right where it is. It's easier if you have a thinner rope, like a water hose or something, but it appears that it's just not moving, when in fact it's repeating. So the standing wave is traveling down to the end of the medium, and then it's reflecting back, going back and forth, back and forth. But it appears that it's just stationary like that. Let's see, I have a super slinky. So we'll talk about transverse and compressional waves soon. Why don't y'all stand up? I'm gonna need somebody to help me. See, I'll come up front so I can put it on the floor. Taylor, you can help. Take this. Let's put it on the floor, and you just sort of stretch it out. You can go back. It goes ways. All right. So I can have two different kinds of waves. I can have I can have a compressional wave, and that's where I take a little piece of this. I take a little piece of it, and I let it go. You see how the wave travels through the medium? In this case, the medium is the slinky. So this is a compressional wave. Let's see if I can make it a little bigger. You can see the little orange tab that it moves a little bit as the wave goes through. That's called a compressional wave. I can also have a periodic wave, or it's not a periodic, a transverse wave. And that's sort of more what you think about. So this is a transverse wave. And you might also call this, yeah, this is more like a standing wave, where it doesn't really look like it's traveling anywhere, that it's just, oh goodness, that one looks like it's traveling. That's called a, what do I call it? Transverse wave. I'll write that down for you in just a minute. All right. Thanks, Taylor. You're awesome. Thank you. Oh. All right. So sound waves are periodic. For example, a sound from a guitar is periodic. What does periodic mean? It repeats. So I have a particular waveform that's created by the guitar, by the string, and it's fairly complicated, but that waveform will repeat over and over and over again. That's why I always get the same sound out of when I pluck a guitar string. Um, a clapping sound is also periodic. It just lasts for a really short time. All right, so that sound is also periodic. It just lasted for a very short time, but during that time, the sound actually repeated one another. And if you record the sound, you can actually see the repeats in the waveform. Sound waves have a medium. We'll see that most waves, except for electromagnetic waves, have a medium. So like, for example, with the slinky, we had a wave traveling through the slinky, and the slinky was the medium. As for sound, though, the medium will be, the air that we're in. So these sound waves cause the air particles. That is our medium. That air is our medium. Cause our air particles to move uh, up and down. Really sort of, yeah, we'll say up and down, but usually not forward. What I mean is, with the slinky, the little piece of orange tape, it didn't go zooming all the way down towards Taylor, right, when the wave traveled through. No, the medium sort of just changes as the wave travels through, but the little piece of orange tape doesn't go down to the end. So that's what that means, that localized, you'll have this compression or rarefication, or you'll have up and down motion, but the actual medium doesn't change position. So when I talk to you, you hear the sound that I'm saying, but the air that's over here isn't coming over to where you are. That it's the wave that's traveling through the air, not the actual medium. Okay, so transverse waves make the medium move up and down. All right, so a good example of a transverse wave, you ever do the wave? So we're a transverse wave. This is a transverse wave. So when I come in front of you, you're going to woo. Okay? You understand? Y'all have to do it, okay? Because if y'all don't do it, he's like, oh, then it's not as cool. You ready? All right, let's go. You have to make the woo sound. All right, that's a transverse wave. On the other hand, something we call a longitudinal wave is a little bit different. So with a transverse wave, the medium, y'all with a medium, the medium goes up and down. But with a longitudinal wave, like with the slinky, the medium doesn't go up and down. The medium does what? It goes side to side, right? So I have a new idea that we can try at your next sporting event. You talk to your athletes and see what they think about this. But we're going to try it here. Instead of when I come here, you go up and down, this is going to be like a kind of friendlier wave. When I come here, you're going to hug the person next to you. Mm-hmm. Y'all ready? All right, let's do it. Well, where's our longitudinal wave? You hug because you're going back and forth. I'm not gonna make you hug one another, but you get the idea. See that y'all are on medium, and so Alexa, you and Taylor would hug one another. You don't have to hug, but the medium would compress, and then when the wave moves away, then it would separate, just like the slinky. Y'all want to do the hug and wave at the next football game? It's a good idea. I think it's an idea whose time has not yet come, but eventually it will come. And everybody's going to say, gosh, I remember that physics class I took 20 years ago. And he said that one day we'd be doing not the wave, but like the hug. What did you say, Taylor? The longitudinal wave. Yeah, the longitudinal wave. All right, so longitudinal waves make the medium. Oh, so this is like the wave at a football game. At a football, not Facebook, at a football game. The longitudinal waves make the medium move back and forth. And this is like the hug at a football game. Coming soon to a stadium near you. All right, the hug. All right. Let's do a few more minutes. I'll let y'all out a few minutes early, but let's just do a little bit more in simple harmonic motion. Right, simple harmonic motion refers, it's just waves. It's just sort of a fancy way to say we're talking about waves. Simple harmonic motion. We're just talking about how things move up and down or back and forth. But we have some definitions within it that are important. Um, it refers particularly when the restoring force is proportional to the displacement. So imagine our spring. The reason the spring is a good medium is because, oh shoot, I don't need all of this. The reason it's going to be because if I pull on it, there's a force that's acting. The force is actually dependent upon how much I pull on it. If I pull on it more, then there's a bigger force. It's kind of like with rubber bands too. If you pull a rubber band back further, then you get a bigger force, a bigger restoring force. The restoring force is that force that puts it back to its equilibrium position. All right. Um, we would say then that the displacement. Shoot, let's just stop here, y'all. I don't want to get too far into this before our test. So we'll just stop here. And on Thursday is your opportunity to shine, to show me what you know. We'll come in. We'll have a seating chart on the door just like last time. You'll take your seat. I'll put some tabs on the front so you know what's what. You'll just take the exam next time. It won't take the full hour, 20 minutes. So when you finish the exam, you can go. Any questions, though, about the exam before we leave again? No, it'll be about 40-ish questions long. Have a great day. 40-ish. I haven't written it yet, but it's going to be around 40.